Let's start with NDRF. Generally, when disasters happen, who come to rescue first? Generally, when any sort of disaster happens, who comes to rescue first? Police? Local people. If the local community is affected, the whole people are affected, then who would come? Rescue team from? Usually we see, think from your general experiences, when you read in newspaper, who comes every day? Navy. Here, if it is in Visakhapatnam, Indian Navy comes for rescue. Army, Air Force, other police forces, fire department. So these are the people who generally come to the rescue. So what if there are some stations here in Visakhapatnam, we have Indian Navy, but what if this is even in Hyderabad we have, in Vijayawada do we have any force? There is no station, right? Neither nor army, neither navy, nothing. So how do they deploy personnel? Who would go and rescue them if something major happens in Vijayawada or any other place where there is no military force? We need to have a special force, right? Every time Navy can't bring its helicopters or other aircrafts and they can come. So for that purpose, we have National Disaster Response Force. This is a specialist force where they would come and immediate response and rescue operations would be done by NDRF. Okay. So this is headed by DG and NDRF, Director General of National Disaster Response Force. He is usually a senior most IPS officer, usually. Okay. It consists of 12 battalions. We have 3 from each. BSF, what is the full form of BSF? Border Security Force. CRPF, Central Reserve Police Force. Then we have from CISF, Central Industrial Security Force. ITBP, Indo-Tibetan Border Police. SSB, Sahastra Sena Bal. So we have, right now we have total 12 battalions, 3 from each, contributing to this force. So what are these forces? These are paramilitary forces, these are security forces. Okay, this team consists of specialists. As when they say specialist force, this force is only for the purpose of national disaster rescue and relief. Because other military forces and other paramilitary forces are busy in their own functions. So for this we need a special force, and in this force, in every battalion, we have a team of engineers, technical officers, paramedics, fire officers, these kind of people who are specially trained for their own activities, and that's a self-satisfactory force itself. They need not bring any personnel from outside for dog squad or nothing. They have their own dog squads, they have their own doctors. Okay, that's a self-sustaining force. Okay, please write NDRF. National Disaster Response Force. NDRF is a specialist response force. NDRF is a specialist response force that can be deployed in a threatening disaster situations. It is headed by Director General DG NDRF. This force works under supervision of what is the apex body for disaster management in India? Apex body, I said. Which one? NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. So this is under supervision of NDMA. Please write. NDRF consists of battalions. Don't write 12 battalions because by the time you write your exam, they might increase or they might decrease. Okay. So just write NDRF consists of battalions from BSF, CISF, CRPF, ITBP and SSB. In the bracket you can write paramilitary forces if you want. Sahastra Sena Bal. This was included, SSB was included recently but before that we used to have all four. Like recently only this has been included. Okay. This is a self-sustaining force. Which have a team of experts in engineering, electrical, bomb squad or dog squad, paramedics or medics, search and rescue team, etc. So these are NDRF battalions with area of responsibility. Okay, for example, in Andhra we have a battalion, 10th battalion in Vijayawada. So for this whole area, who is responsible? Which battalion is responsible? Battalion, 10th battalion, Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh. So it is responsible for Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Karnataka. Let's say we have one NDRF station in Delhi. So would it be sufficient to cover whole of India? No. They need to be pre-positioned in certain center locations so that Vijayawada we can say it is center, it can come to Visakhapatnam, Hyderabad, Bangalore also. It's legible to travel and to immediately respond. Alright. So right now we have 12 battalions. Please have a look. You have a station in Guwahati, Harghata, Mandali. This is important, Mandali, because it's in Orissa. Orissa is one place where cyclones usually affect, so that's an important station. You have one in Arakonam, that is near Chennai. You have one in Pune, Vadodara and Gujarat, Bathinda and Chandigarh, Himachal, Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir, that region. That's Bathinda. Have a look. You have one in Ghaziabad, Delhi, UP area. You have one in Patna. You have one in Varanasi for UP, that area. You have one in Doimuk for northeast. Doimuk. Alright? Okay. So till now we were discussing the institutional mechanism at national level. What do we have? What are the institutions we have at national level? What is the apex body? NDMA. Then what do we have? We have who executes the NDMA plans? National Executive Committee. None of you have revised the class. You have just come and sat. Who executes? National Executive Committee. What are the two key committees which are responsible for top level decision making? Cabinet Committee on. We have two committees. What are those? Cabinet Committee on National Crisis Management Committee, and one more, Cabinet Committee on Security. All right. So what else we have at national level? NPDR, National Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. Okay. What else we have? We have NDRF. That's one of the main force. So all right. So at state we have already discussed. Remember this? NDMA, SDMA, DDMA. NDMA is headed by who is ex officio chairperson? Prime Minister. SDMA? CM. DDMA? District Magistrate or District Collector. Okay. So the same thing we are discussing at state level. So at state level, what do we have? We already know. We have SDMA. Who is the head? CM. So each state in India shall have its own institutional framework for disaster management and shall prepare its own disaster management plan. So at national anyway we have NDMA, and again NDMA gives a plan. But Disaster Management Act says that each state in India should have its own plan. Because who has the primary responsibility for disasters in the country? Which government? State government. So it takes help from NDMA, it also takes help from DDMA and other district local authorities, and then this is the most important part. Okay. So DM Act mandates that each state government shall take necessary steps for integration of measures for prevention of disasters or mitigation into state development plans, allocation of funds, and establish early warning systems. So it is mandated, it is compulsory for them to, in their state development plans, we need to integrate the measures for prevention, we need to integrate the measures for mitigation, so that it would be easy. And allocation of funds also. In budget, we need to have a certain corpus, a certain amount of money for disaster management, for disaster response, for disaster preparedness. So that is allocation of funds. In development plans, if you are building any infrastructure, it is better if that would be disaster resilient. If you are making any urban housing plans or rural housing plans, it would be better the houses are disaster resilient. So kind of these things, okay, where you have to incorporate the measures into the development plans itself. So that's one. So this we know, it mandates that setting of SDMA with Chief Minister as ex officio chairperson. Please write. Institutional framework at state level. As per the DM Act 2005, each state in India shall have its own institutional framework for disaster management. Each state in India shall have its own institutional framework for disaster management. So whenever there is disaster management, please write DM. That would save time for us. And shall prepare its own disaster management plan for the state. And shall prepare its own disaster management plan for the state. Alright? The DM Act mandates that the DM Act, second point, the DM Act mandates that each state government shall take necessary steps for integration of measures for prevention, and mitigation, of disasters, measures for prevention and mitigation of disasters into state development plans, allocation of funds, and establish Early warning systems. Third point, DM Act 2005 mandates the setting of SDMA. DM Act mandates setting up of SDMA with Chief Minister as ex officio chairperson. Okay. So for NDMA, who is executing the plans of NDMA? Prime Minister won't be executing. We have National Executive Committee. This is important because we have had question on National Executive Committee in the past. Alright, so this is important. So just like that, NEC we should also have some body for execution of plans, for execution of all these things. What is it? State Execution Committee, State Executive Committee. It is state. Okay. So, who heads this? It's headed by Chief Secretary. Who heads National Executive Committee? Union Home Secretary. Okay. So, state governments constitute SEC, who is headed by Chief Secretary to assist SDMA in performance of its functions. So this will help SDMA in performing its functions. What does NEC do? It does the same to NDMA. Alright. So it will coordinate and monitor the implementation of national policy, national plan and state plans for disaster management. It has to follow both of national plans and state plans as well. It will also provide information to the NDMA. See, the information exchange happens in both levels. NDMA guides SDMA. SDMA also gives inputs to NDMA because only they know what is the real problem. They know their resources. So they know their things, right? So that's the reason why it will also provide information to NDMA. Even DDMA, if you see, it will also provide information to SDMA and also NDMA because local people have better information than people who are looking from outside, than people who are making policies. Okay? Please write. State Executive Committee. It is headed by Chief Secretary. It is headed by Chief Secretary to assist SDMA in the performance of its functions. Headed by Chief Secretary to assist SDMA in performance of its functions. Point number 2. It will coordinate and monitor the implementation of national policy, national plan, state plan for disaster management. It will also provide information to NDMA. Done? Okay. Same, we have a framework at district level. And what do we have? We have DDMA, District Disaster Management Authority. It is headed by District Collector and District Magistrate and is responsible for overall coordination of disaster management efforts and planning. So, District Collector, when let's say a disaster hits Visakhapatnam, a cyclone, so in that case, District Collector is the major person who is responsible for management of the disaster because he is the person who is available in the city. Usually you see CM takes an helicopter, he comes for a visit after 2-3 days. If it is a huge disaster, then PM would come taking a bigger helicopter after a week. But who is readily available in the city or in the district? We have district magistrate. So he is primarily responsible. So when we dream of becoming IAS, and the thing we should also know is when disasters happen, when unforeseen situation things happen in districts, then you won't be district collectors, they won't be able to sleep for 24 to 48 hours. They'll have to be on site, they'll have to be on roads working with the issues. So this level, this DDMA and district collector plays the most important role. They plays the better role than SDMA and NDMA. So this is very crucial. Okay, DDMA prepares disaster management plan for district and monitors the implementation. Again, DDMA has its own planning and implementation. It also follows the guideline by NDMA and SDMA, followed by all district level officers. Okay. Please write institutional framework at district level. Don't write everything because you know all the points. The functions are same, but the jurisdiction is being changed. Institutional framework at district level. You have at district level, district disaster management authority is headed by district collector or district magistrate. At district level, DDMA headed by district collector or district magistrate is responsible for overall coordination of the district management of disaster management efforts and planning. And is responsible for overall coordination of the disaster management efforts and planning. Okay, please don't write these 2 points because it's common for all, Alright? Okay. So till here, please open your Disaster Management Act 2005. So please read the first line. It lays down institutional and legal and financial and coordination mechanism. So that was institutional and also coordination mechanism between NDMA, SDMA. It was also institutional because various institutions are involved. So now we'll have to look at legal. It's not necessary for this exam because we are not going to become lawyers. We need to just look at a financial mechanism. Okay. So while extracting resources from government, is it a long process or easy process to extract resources from government? Let it be center government and especially central government. It's a tough process, right? So when disaster happens, what is the meaning of disaster? Disasters are something which happens suddenly, which happens without informing you. So how will we have some for response for relief, especially relief materials and immediate response? What do we need to have? We need resources to respond, right? So whenever a disaster happens, usually you see Odisha CM Relief Fund, Kerala CM Relief Fund, because what do we need? We need resources. That's the most important thing when a disaster hits a place. So for that purpose, we have National Disaster Response Fund. So instead of going through the long process of, making down points and then explaining it to government and then taking money, instead of that, we can happily have a separate fund for the purpose of National Disaster Response, for the disaster responses. Okay. So in that, and national level, we have National Disaster Response Fund, which is under central government. So what do? Expenses for emergency response, relief and rehabilitation due to any disaster situation, any threatening disaster situation. Same like that, even state needs to have. So who is primarily responsible? State government is primarily responsible. So even state should have its own fund. So at state level, we have State Disaster Response Fund. So it is also for meeting the expenditure for providing immediate relief to the victims. Here, if you see the difference, this is at central level, this is at state level. Again, this is only for immediate relief. But here what do we have? For emergency response, relief and also rehabilitation. Because here it's large amount of money, so we are using it for more purposes. Here obviously the amount would be less. So here only for the immediate relief. What is immediate relief? Food, water, shelter, medicines. These four are immediate relief materials. Alright? Please write. Financial arrangements under NDM Act 2005. National Disaster Response Fund. It is a fund managed by central government for meeting the expenses for emergency response, relief, emergency response, relief and rehabilitation. Due to any threatening disaster situation. You have State Disaster Response Fund. It is SDRF is used only for meeting the expenditure for providing immediate relief to the victims. Done. So we have covered financial aspect also. This is a small aspect. So now we have drawbacks of the National Disaster Management Act 2005. This is very important because usually the questions in UPSC are to criticize, to comment, So whenever the questions are very comprehensive, they don't ask you for facts. This is NDMA, like this is National Disaster Management Act, what it is, what does it do. Usually the questions are not like that. The questions are always to critically comment them or, critically appraise them. So in that, what do we need? If they say criticize or to comment, what would we point out? We would point out negative points. We would point out drawbacks. So in the same case, we also need to know the drawbacks of NDMA Act, NDM to the Act 2005. Okay. So the first and foremost drawback is very much there regarding everything in the country. What it is slow and slack. The implementation is slow and slack. What does it mean? You'll understand it in the second statement. There was a delay in finalizing the National Plan on Disaster Management, which was finally released in 2016. So when did the act come? So it says it has to lay down institutional, legal, all these kinds of policies. But when did we come up with plan? In 2016. So how slow it is, how slack it is? 11 years. Alright. So that's one of the major drawback of this act. The act has also been criticized for marginalizing the non-governmental organizations, elected local representatives, local communities and civil groups. What is the meaning of marginalization? You draw margins. Margins, you corner them. They are not in the main page. They are somewhere else on the margins. That is marginalization. Usually we say marginalization of tribes because they are at some pocket of the city. They are not in the mainstream society where the society is developed. So that is marginalization. So this says it has marginalizing of NGOs. So we have already studied this act. So we have studied NDMA, SDMA and DDMA. Did we study anything about the role of NGOs or the role of local elected representatives or anything? No. That means what it is? They are clearly marginalized. They are not included in the disaster management. But who are the people who should be there first, who are available readily? When something happens, usually the people go to their ward councillor or their village sarpanch. So the role of elected local representative is immense in also disaster management. But this is clearly overlooked. And also the local communities, the people who are there and civic groups, as you said. So this is one more thing. It has also been accused of fostering a hierarchical top-down approach that gives the central, state and district authorities sweeping powers. So what is top-down approach? We are coming from this NDMA, SDMA, DDMA, from top to down. So we have one more approach which is opposite, which is bottom-up approach. Usually they say bottom-up approach is good because people in the bottom, like authorities, institutions in the bottom, they have better idea than institutions at the top level. So this act is also accused of hierarchical. We know what is hierarchical. So this act has given major powers for central government, state government and district governments, rather than it would have been better if these people were also involved. So these are some suggestions. And we have more. So these are general observations. We have also observations made by CAG. What is the full form? Say it loud. Auditor General. What is C stands for? Comptroller, Auditor General. So what does it? What does CAG do? When you are auditing something, that means the public accounts, the government accounts are reviewed by CAG every year, and he submits his report to the Parliament and President. Okay, so we have also some observations made by CAG report. So what are those? It is said that none of the major projects taken up by NDMA were complete. So this is the situation where a lot of projects were not complete, all the major projects. Okay, either why they were not complete, either most of the projects were abandoned, they were left off, madhilone vadilesaru, or because of poor designing, they have drawn some plan first, the plan wasn't good enough, they striked it off, and then again they had to replan and then start in the beginning. So this is the reason for why major projects were incomplete, which are taken up by the project. Okay, it also highlighted that several critical posts in NDMA were vacant and consultants were used for day-to-day activities. In public services, in governments, it is famous where, you know, people come, pass their time and go back, or if they are very subordinate officers, they would help their officers day-to-day activities, their families day-to-day activities also. So this is the situation which is highlighted by CAG. So whenever you are making in your answers, whenever you are writing drawbacks or whenever you are commenting or criticizing, it is always better to comment according to a report. Let it be a report at national level or international level, because or any credible source, rather than writing your own personal comments on the act or anything on any given policy of government. It's always better to write like this. Okay, this you can incorporate in your answer writing. Understood? Please write. Drawbacks of National Disaster Management Act 2005. The implementation of Act has been slow and slack. Second point, there was a delay in finalizing National Plan on Disaster Management. There was a delay in finalizing National Plan on Disaster Management, which was finally finalized in 2016. act has been criticized for marginalizing NGOs. Third point, the act has been criticized for marginalizing NGOs, elected local representatives, local communities, elected local representatives, local communities, and civil groups. It has also been accused of hierarchical. It has also been accused of hierarchical, top-down approach, that gives center, state, district authorities sweeping powers. Next, as per CAG report, as per CAG report, it is said that none of the major projects taken up by NDMA were complete. Don't write second point. It is said that none of the major projects taken up by NDMA were complete. And then write, it also highlighted that several critical posts in NDMA were vacant. Full stop. Don't write this. Just write till here. Several critical posts in NDMA were vacant. Okay. Again, there is one more CAG report summary. Are we done? So again, there is one more CAG report summary. This is very much recent. Recently only it has released its summary, where it suggested that against the target of installing 219 telemetry stations, which are flood forecasting instrument. Does anyone of you know what is a telemetry station? No? So let's see. So normally, let's say if the water level is still here, so then there is no chance of floods. It is fine to be there. So, but when the water level go on increasing, so there is a certain level which is marked as this is alert level. So when the water level reaches alert level, there are sensors here, which senses and it sends information to the tower, where the tower gives warning to the local villages that runaway floods are going to happen. Alright, so this is a telemetry, flood forecasting instrument or flood forecasting station, alright, where there are sensors and telemetry towers. So this is at a larger level. This is cellular telemetry coverage. What is tele? When we say tele, we say telephone, television. What is happening? So things are happening over a distance. So telephone means we are sitting here and we are talking to somebody at some point, in some part of world or country. So that is telephone. You are listening. Phone is to listen. Alright, television. Something is happening in USA. You are sitting and watching it at your home. Your distance vision. You are looking at it. So same like that. Telemetry. Again. So here you have towers. The sensor signals are passed and it gives alerts to the people whoever are residing in that area. Alright. So these are basically telemetry stations, flood forecasting stations. So the report said that this is very much necessary because we know usually where what is the area usually where floods happens the most? Yesterday, like day before yesterday in the class we discussed there are 5 special regions: Himalayan region, alluvial plain. So where do floods happen out of all these 5 distinctive regions? In alluvial plains, Bihar floods, Kosi floods. So we know, so there it is necessary to have this to have these stations so that we can decrease the impact. So against the target was to install 219, but how many of them are installed? Only 56. Between 5 years, out of 219, only 56 had been installed. So the worst part is, whatever were installed, out of them 59% of them were non-functional. So they are as good as not to be there. It's like almost we are zero. Okay, so this is one point which is very important. The second point is 27% of posts in NDRF were also vacant. We also had vacant posts in NDMA, and also in NDRF we have vacant posts. One more thing is NDRF Training Institute, the National Institute of Disaster Response. In NDRF we said we have specialists, we have technical officers, we have engineers, electricals, paramedics. So for that they need to be trained for this particular thing, because they are paramilitary forces, they are not trained for disaster response. So they thought there was an institute which was approved in 2006 itself for NDRF's training. But what is the stage? It has not been established. So that is the state. Please write this. Here please add the word recent. The recent CAG report summary, suggested that against a target of installing 219 telemetry stations, bracket flood forecasting stations, flood forecasting instrument, between 2012 and 2017 only 56 had been installed as of August 2016. So the target was 219 and we only have 56 of them. And 59% of the existing telemetry stations were non-functional. 59% of the existing telemetry stations were non-functional. And second point, 27% of the posts, 27% of the posts in NDRF were vacant. Third point, NDRF's Training Institute, comma, third point, NDRF Training Institute, comma, National Institute of Disaster Response had not been established, though it had been approved in 2006. NDRF's Training Institute, National Institute of Disaster Response had not been established, though it had been approved in 2006. Alright. So these were observations made by CAG. We also have one more report, which is the report given by Public Accounts Committee. Again, this is a committee which review public accounts, the government accounts. Okay. It submitted its report on disaster preparedness in India. The report was to see how well we were prepared, how well India is prepared for disasters. It prepared its report in 2015. So it made the following observations. Under the Act, National Executive Committee is required to meet at least once in 3 months. However, it was found that the committee met infrequently. What is the minimum time for the Parliament to meet? Any idea? And then 6 months is compulsory for them to meet, but usually Parliament meets thrice in a year. We have 3 sessions, right? So in the same way, NEC is required to meet once in 3 months, but God knows how frequently they met. So one more thing is when West Bengal floods has happened and when disasters really happened, even at that point of time, NEC did not meet. That's the worst thing. We can't write that, but that's the worst thing about it. Okay, so the second point is center, states and district has not constituted mitigation funds which could be utilized for disaster preparedness, restoration, etc. So the NDMA Act, Disaster Management Act, has said that center, state and also district should have their own mitigation fund. But in reality, we don't have any funds like that. If we would have had, we would have studied. No? There is no fund like that. So these are the two small observations made by Public Accounts Committee on disaster preparedness in India. Please write. The Public Accounts Committee submitted its report on disaster preparedness in India. Please highlight disaster preparedness in India and also highlight Public Accounts Committee. In 2015, Public Accounts Committee has submitted its report on disaster preparedness in India in 2015. It made the following observations. Under the Act, comma, first point, under the Act, comma, NEC, National Executive Committee, NEC, is required to meet once in 3 months. However, it was found that the committee met infrequently. Second point, the center, states, comma, districts had not constituted mitigation funds full stop. Just write till mitigation funds. We know what can be done by mitigation funds, so need not write. So the center, state and districts have not constituted mitigation funds which were mandated under the Act. Okay, there were a lot of things which were mandated under the Act. There were a lot of things the Act suggested, but in reality, very few things of them have happened. Okay. So when there is a question like this to criticize, yes, you highlight the context, you write what is in the context, what is it they asked, then you write the drawbacks, and then you also have to write solutions, and then you have to close the answer with a positive remarks. You should never end an answer like this. Okay, but now in this class we are not discussing solutions. We have those anyway plans so that we can use as solutions. Alright? Any doubts still here? Okay, let's move ahead. So how many observations we have? One observation, we have general observation on drawbacks. Second, we have CAG observations. Then we have Public Accounts Committee observations. Alright. So it's always better to write institutional observations rather than your personal opinions in your exams. Okay. Okay. So according to the Act, we should have a policy. So that the plan for disaster management has come up in 2016. Yes, which we studied. This is very important. But we also have national policy on disaster management, which this is not very significant, but there are some guidelines which we will be using in few things. So it is good to know this. So NDMA has come up with policy, national policy on disaster management in 2009. What was the vision? The vision is to build a safe and disaster resilient India. That is the vision. How would we do? By developing a holistic, proactive, multi-disaster oriented and technology driven strategy. So these are the things that should be done through a culture of prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response. This statement is very important because what is the aim? To build a safe and disaster resilient India. That is the aim. How can we do that? By developing a holistic is something comprehensive which is total, and proactive, we have discussed what proactive is, and multi-disaster oriented. So what is multi-disaster oriented? When we have one disaster happening, let's say earthquake. When earthquake happens, what happens? Only earthquake happens? No. Earthquake triggers landslides. Earthquake triggers tsunami. Earthquake triggers fire accidents. And earthquake triggers a lot of accidents, right? So usually when one disaster happens, it is a multi-disaster. So if you are preparing, if you are doing something, it can't be just one disaster oriented. It should always be multi-disaster oriented, all right? And also it should be technology driven. Right now, why do we use technology in anything? Why are we using smartphones? Because we are becoming less smarter. We don't remember things now. Why do we use technology? To help us, right? So now, as we are living in a technologically advanced world, the strategy should also be a technology driven strategy. So that's the bare minimum which is expected. Through a culture of prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response. Here they used a word called culture. As I said, every word you use in your answers, the word, it's a whole meaning in itself. So when they say culture, what do they mean? What is the meaning of culture? What is the basic definition of culture? Way of life. So that means you do it every day. So they say culture of reading newspaper. That means you do it religiously. You do it every day. So that you should imbibe. Culture is something which you imbibe. Alright? Imbibe into your things. So culture of prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response. We have 3 key stages. You were not there in the last class, no? So in the these come under prevention, preparedness and mitigation PMP are pre-disaster management phase. Okay. So there was one question asking which is the most important phase in the disaster management cycle. What is your opinion? Pre-disaster phase. Why? Because I just mentioned. Why? Why pre-disaster? Prevention is better than above. Good. So if we take care of pre-disaster management, it won't become a disaster. It might stay as a hazard. The loss of lives and property might be reduced. So prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response should be a culture. It should be imbibed at every level. It should be imbibed at institutional level. It should be imbibed at community level. Clear? Please write. National Policy on Disaster Management 2009. It is prepared by NDMA. It was prepared by NDMA. Vision. When you are writing vision, write like this. Vision is to build a safe and disaster resilient by, and then write these points, and then through, and then write these points. Okay, if you write like this, it will be difficult for you to remember. Okay, so it is prepared with a vision to build a safe and disaster resilient India by developing a holistic, proactive, multi-disaster oriented and technologically driven strategy. For doing anything, we need a strategy, right? Through a culture of PMP, prevention, mitigation and preparedness, and response. So it is prepared with a vision to build a safe and disaster resilient India by developing a holistic, proactive, multi-disaster oriented and technologically driven strategy through a culture of prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response. Done? Done. So after this was followed by National Disaster Management Plan 2016. Okay. This is the most important part of your course because the recent questions which were asked on disaster management, most of them are based upon this plan because it is the first thing is it is the first plan. Second thing is it is the most recent plan. So if you write your exam even after 5 years, this plan is still relevant because we might have disaster management plan 2020, we never know. But this plan would be still relevant because it is the first plan. Alright. So the government of India for the first time released its first disaster management plan in 2016. Again it has a big vision. Let's see. The vision is to make India disaster resilient, achieve substantial disaster risk reduction, and significantly decrease the losses of lives, livelihoods, assets. Which kinds of assets? Economic assets, social assets, physical assets, cultural assets, and environmental assets. By maximizing the ability to cope with disaster at all levels of administration as well as managing communities. Yes, this looks complicated, but let's simplify it. So here also we have a common, is it visible if I write here? No? Okay. So here also we have a common aim. What is the aim? Disaster resilient India. Okay. So what should we achieve? Disaster risk reduction should, okay, we should reduce the risk. What else we have to do? We should decrease the loss of lives and livelihoods and assets. Which kinds of assets? Economic assets, physical assets, social assets, cultural assets, and environmental assets. So how do we do it? By increasing the coping ability. What is the coping ability? In day before yesterday's class we have discussed. Capacity. Capacity of both administration and communities. Okay, I'll tell it for you. You understood? If you see this, you will understand. So the aim is to make India a disaster resilient country. So how would we do? We should reduce the risk. Disaster risk should be gone down. There should be also the loss of lives, livelihoods, and assets should come down. That should be lessened. So how would we do this? This is the goal. So how would we do this? By increasing the capacity of both administration and also communities. Simple. So here, what are economic assets we are talking about? Economic assets are assets which create economic activity, industries, agriculture. So you have physical assets also, which are again infrastructure, physical roads, communication, transport, these kind of things. You have social assets, you have cultural assets. So last time when we had a low pressure, Totlakonda has gone. So then what happened? We lost our cultural asset. It was Buddhism, it was part of our culture. And you have environmental assets. We have forests, which usually when cyclone hits or earthquake comes, even environmental assets are destroyed, right? So we have to protect all of them. Okay, by maximizing the ability to cope with disasters. What is the ability to cope with disaster? It is capacity. If you build capacity, then you can, the coping thing would be increasing, no? The risk would be reducing. The vulnerability would be reducing. So it should be of both administration and also among the communities. Please write. The National Disaster Management Plan 2016. It is the first plan on disaster management released by Government of India. It is the first plan on disaster management released by Government of India in the year 2016, which we all know. So the vision of the plan, please write again vision and write this. Make India The vision is to make India disaster resilient, comma, achieve, to make India disaster resilient, comma, achieve substantial disaster risk reduction, comma, achieve substantial disaster risk reduction and significantly decrease the loss of lives comma, livelihoods and assets. After assets, put them in bracket like this. Assets which are economic, physical, social, cultural, and environmental. By maximizing the ability to cope with disasters at all levels of administration, as well as communities. Please write this also. Goal is, what is the goal? Disaster resilient India. Okay. Then we have to reduce disaster risk. We also have to reduce loss of lives, livelihood and assets should go down. So how would we do it? By increasing the capacity development of both at both administration levels and community levels. Please make this. Is it visible? Quick. Okay. So the reason why I asked you to make it is, so whenever you are reading a lengthy things or whenever we read too much for UPSC, right? So you should always make them in a pictorial format or in a format which is easy for you to understand and remember. Which is easy? This is easy or this is easy? This we can never forget, right? So whenever you are writing your notes, especially when you are writing your notes, you should always write notes in this format so that you can exactly present it in your exam or, and write better. Okay. So this is a small tip of doing things. Okay. Shall we take a break and meet in another 10-15 minutes? is a feature called mark yourself safe. So Facebook is nothing but social media where you are interacting. It's a platform. So that is one feature where the world would know that yes, this person is fine, fit and fine, though disaster is hit that place. Okay, so that's one of the aspect. And what else you have? Mobile technologies. Did you receive messages from government when there is heat wave in summers and when there is low pressure and when cyclone is expected? You get messages on your mobile phones, on Google, even Google updates you. So what is this we are using? Mobile technologies and social media for disaster risk reduction. Okay, this is one of the major important points. Fifth is encourage greater participation and leadership of women in disaster risk management. So everywhere, as a part of women empowerment, we are encouraging women in every field. So here also there is a need to encourage female leadership in disaster risk management. That's one point. So then you have build on local capacity and initiative. This is very much important because as we have already discussed, the people who are first affected are the local communities. So they should be, their capacity should be better than anything else, right? So they can deal with themselves in a better manner. So this is very important, building on local capacity and initiating. Okay. 7, invest in risk mapping globally. So we have hazard zonation maps, we have earthquake maps. Like here we are in a very less intensity zone map. Here in Visakhapatnam, earthquake is highly impossible. But if we talk about cyclone risk zonation, we are in a very good risk. So if you know that, you know by mapping. See, if you point yourself on a map, if I point somewhere here, you say, this is some place. Here you say, yeah, I'm in Visakhapatnam, I'm in Chennai, I'm in Bangalore, I'm in Hyderabad. So when you know, why do we map? To know your position, right? So when you map your risk, then we know at what risk you are at and you can deal things in a better manner. We can frame better policies, alright? So that is very much important. 8th point, ensure that the opportunity to learn from a disaster is not wasted. This is an interesting point because ఎవరికైనా అర్థమైందా? What is this? Did anybody understand from this? Learning from experience. So when we write prelims, mains, interview, so they say usually I think 80% of the aspirants or even more, I think 90% of the aspirants don't make it in first attempt. Most of them, the average number of attempts we need to give is like 3 to 4. Why? Because people learn from their previous experiences. That is very important. We should never, they say no, every mistake is an opportunity, seize it, never lose an opportunity. So it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, but we should not waste that, opportunity. We should always seize it. So regarding disaster management, we have had such failure. What was that? What is the worst disaster you remember in India? In whole of India. The worst disaster. The popular most disaster. Please. Tsunami. That was the worst disaster? Yeah, 2004 tsunami. So then what happened? We lost lots of lives. So only after 2004 tsunami we got the National Disaster Management Act 2005. We never had tsunami prediction centers, nothing. So they were out of whole Indian Ocean, we were not having anything. We had no clue. Suddenly tsunami came. So they were with US and other countries, they had the information. They had the technology where they predicted that yes, tsunami is going to hit Indian Ocean. But they didn't share their knowledge with us. So then India took initiative. So for whole of Indian Ocean, for whole Indonesia, all these Indian Ocean countries, India is the country which has a huge tsunami predictable system. We'll be discussing it in, I think, tomorrow's class or day after tomorrow's class. I'll tell you how the exactly system happened and how exactly it works, where it is. So one thing we had is we developed a tsunami predictable system. We have come up with 2005 Disaster Management Act. So India did not waste the opportunity of learning from the failure, from the disaster. So I think that's why he included it, PM. Okay, that's one important point. 9th important point, it's part of a strategy where you use technology, you leverage technology to enhance the efficiency of a disaster risk management. So wherever we are using technology, that means we are increasing the efficiency. What is the difference between productivity and production? Productivity and production. Okay, whatever is not useful, that's production. What is productivity and final output is production. Final output is production. But what is productivity? So you are 6 people in the class. Let's say you all produced 60. What can you produce? Pencils? 60 pencils. So what is the productivity? 60 by 6. So productivity is per individual. So when we are, let's say in agriculture, 1 acre of farm land is producing 100 kilos of rice. So it's you measure productivity for unit basis, on a unit basis. So production is the total output. So when one person is producing more, when one individual, that means when efficiency is more, your productivity would be more. So naturally when productivity is better, the production is also better. So why do we leverage technology in anywhere? Anywhere, why do we use technology? To increase efficiency, to increase productivity, because man can't do anything on his own. Like he can't do everything on his own. Alright? So that's one thing. 10. Bring about a greater cohesion, international response to disasters. So when Nepal earthquake happened, India was there and a lot of countries were there who were on ground, who were helping. So NDRF, when we studied about NDRF was all over the international newspapers when Nepal earthquake hit. Why? Because it was the first force to reach Nepal and it saved thousands of lives. So Nepal isn't our country, so international. So and when cyclones happen in recently, I don't remember which country was that, it's an African country. So there US Navy, Indian Navy, Japanese Navy, Australian Navy, so all these ships were present, giving them relief materials, giving them taking up rescue measures and all these things. So when things happen in one country, usually whoever countries are there nearby, they would go for help. So international response is also very much important in disaster risk reduction. Okay. So these are the 10 points agenda for disaster risk reduction. You can write it later because now it would be a huge task. Okay.